Loops in Excel VBA are difficult, but if you know the basic structure, if you have a plan, if you have a blueprint, you can get loops in Excel VBA working for you. That's what we're going to go through in this video. And I've got some special tips and tricks for working with loops that I don't share often on the channel. This video is from our Members Monday learning community. If you want a whole community behind your Excel VBA learning, check out Members Monday. There's a free 1-hour session. The link is in the video description below. Let's get into it. Call it your kind of easy guide to loops in Excel VBA, but I want you to be aware of what the blueprint is. I call it the blueprint. So this is the repeated language that is used every time in this loop example. So whether you're with the for each loop, whether you're looping through sheets in a file, cells in a range, open workbooks, the structure of the syntax is the same. And we can prove that by going back to the for each module. Just study the syntax. You know, code is language. VBA is language. Language is all about spotting patterns. So just have a look at these two. This routine and this routine, spot the pattern. How about it? Well, both of them, we declare a variable on an object variable. Bang, there it is in the blueprint. And then we say for each object in a collection. So for each, then we use the name of the object variable. Then we do our code. In this case, we're just flashing up the name of the sheet. And then we have next object here. So this is our blueprint. Whenever we're using for each, this is what we start with. And this is it, guys. When you're writing code, as a way to access for next, let's look at the blueprint. What about it? What do you think about the patterns? Are you recognizing anything here? If you have to compare these two, you know, what are the patterns? Well, so we can see the blueprint is pretty much the same. We've got 3 lines, basically. Yeah, 3 lines of code. But there are some critical differences. Rather than declaring an object variable, when we do for next, we declare an integer variable. What is an integer variable? Integer variable is just a whole number variable. And an integer variable works up to, I think it's about 32,000. So we've managed to execute the blueprint to transfer it into the VBA editor. Let's go ahead and prove that this is actually working. Message box counter, let's see what happens. I'm going to step through this code. When I execute this line of code, message box, we know means the message box is going to flash up. What's going to be in the message box? Hit the F8 key, let's find out. We've got 1 in the message box. Why is that? Well, we know from the blueprint, we say for variable equals x to y, for counter equals 1 to 10. So this is the first time we're going through the loop, counter has a value of 1. This is the beauty of for next. You know, there's this inbuilt increment in for next. So we've got this inbuilt mechanism that's going to increment up the value of the variable by 1. So I'm going to go back through the loop now. In fact, where's the yellow line going to go now? Yeah, this is the loop in action. We go back to the top of the loop and we're going back through the loop again. Message box counter. So this is the critical question, really. If you're understanding this well, you should be pretty comfortable answering this question. But don't worry, if you're not, you're in the right place. You're in a safe learning environment here. That's what Members Monday is all about. What value is going to flash up when we execute this line of code? When I hit the F8 key, we can see 2 is flashing up there. That's because in for next, we have this inbuilt mechanism that increments the value of the variable up by 1 until we get to 10. So hitting F8 again, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let me ask you this question. Where is the code going to go now? Where does the code go next? Does it go back to the top of the loop? The code is going to leave the routine. Did you see that? We went through the code 10 times, the number of times we specified at the top of the code. And after that, the exit condition was satisfied because counter equaled 10. That means we exited the loop. This is why for next is good. You know, it's very practical. It has this inbuilt mechanism to count through it. And it's quite safe. You know, it's quite difficult to crash a for next loop, although I'm sure I've done it many times in my career. Like the way that the way the variable works like that is just really helpful. And then we've got step as well. Okay, so what does step do? So step is another inbuilt feature. It allows us to control the increment with which we work through the loop, the increment with which we work through the loop. Now, if we don't say anything, which is how we set it up, by default, step is going to be set to 1. And that means Excel goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If we have step in here, we have options. So we can say step 2. What's going to happen now? And is this an endless loop? I'm not absolutely sure. We're going to see what's going to happen. So counter equals 1. Now, because we're on step 2, counter is going to equal 3. Counter equals 5. Counter equals 7. Counter equals 9. And then we exit the loop because the variable is more than the exit condition that we specified at the top of the loop there. What's the practical application of all this? Now, the truth is, for next needs a little bit of help to make it practical, unlike for each, which is working with objects in Excel, working with objects in collections. It's a very practical loop. For next needs a bit of help. It needs a little help from its friend. Yeah. And for next's great friend is, here we go. One of my great friends as well is the offset method. What? The offset method. Now, Excel VBA is about position control. How many times have I said this on Members Monday? Excel gives us a grid, gives us a spreadsheet to work with. How successful we are with coding depends to a great extent on how well can we control where we are on this grid. That's a skill in itself. That's called position control. There's a few techniques in Excel VBA that really help us with position control. Dot cells is one of them. Got a video on my YouTube channel about the dot cells technique. Offset though, offset for me is the OG, and it's the one you really need to know. And I love offset. And this is why I recommend learning the offset formula. So let's start from B5 and let's see the for next loop working with its great friend offset. Offset means move away from, move away from. We're going to move away from whatever cell we put here, this number of rows, and then this number of columns. You can do that. You can use static values with offset, but offset gets really exciting when you use a variable with it. So we've got this counter variable. We can combine it with offset. Now what's going to happen? Whoa, we've got a list of numbers. Why is that? Well, we know every time we go through the loop, the value of counter is increasing by 1. Counter equals 2. I'm just hovering the cursor over the variable, by the way. That allows you to see the value of the variable. So we're moving away from B5 by, now it's 4. That takes us B5, that takes us to B9 or B10. Now it's 5, now it's 6, now it's 7. That's having the effect of writing a list, going from one row to the next. So we can now complete this. How would we complete this to get a list of numbers? We just need to change one thing about this line of code. What about this? Hitting play. What's going to happen? We can see that. For next loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What if we wanted to put those numbers in a row rather than in a column? If we switch round the two elements, the two components of the offset method, what's going to happen now? Let's see, hit the F5 key. Our list of numbers now goes, fits in the row there. That's because the variable's working with the second component of offset, which controls how many columns we move across. So what did you make of the Excel VBA loop blueprints? Well, if you enjoyed this session, you are going to love our Members Monday learning community. All kinds of stuff in there, live sessions, a library of content. You can get a whole community behind you and your Excel VBA learning. I've got a free sample session. You've just got to follow the link in the video description. I'll see you there.